So what we're going to be doing here is we're going to check every box that applies to the angles that are listed. So between angles 1 and 2. So this is why it'd be a good idea to have the other notes out that we started yesterday, or perhaps the dictionaries. So with diagram number 1, adjacent is a box here. Adjacent means angles that are next to each other. Are these right next to each other? Next to each other would be like here and here, which these are not. Vertical is exactly across from one another. Are these vertical? Yeah. All right. So these are vertical. Complementary. Oh yeah. Complementary means that they add up to equal 90 degrees. Do we have any information on angle measurements here? No. Okay. So we cannot say complementary, nor can we say supplementary. Now, if these two happened to be adjacent to one another, if they were next to each other, we could say, messed around with my fan and the document camera stopped. Fun. Okay, 1 second. All right, so if angles 1 and 2 were directly next to each other here, they would form a straight line. Therefore, they would be supplementary and a linear pair, because linear pairs are right next to each other and they form a straight line, but it's not those. So the only thing we can check for diagram 1 is vertical angles. How about diagram 2? Give me a thumbs up or thumbs down for adjacents. What do you think? See some thumbs up? Yep. Those are right next to each other. Good. If they are right next to each other, they cannot be vertical because they're not across from one another. Angles cannot be both vertical and adjacent to one another. It's going to be one or the other, or neither, but it cannot be both. Are these complementary angles? I see people with thumbs up. I like that. That's good. Why? Who can tell me why 1 and 2 add up to 90 degrees? Because what? It does, but the square's over here. So how do we know that those also add up to 90? You're right that they are. Hey, good morning.
Mr. Myers was one of our lucky winners of a free drink for her High Five Friday. So if you want to select a drink,
great.
High Five.
I don't even know what that means, but I'll take it.
Email.
Oh,
yes, it is. It's okay. So I made a plethora of soy for you guys. We have your soy latte drinker. This is the regular white chocolate mocha, salted caramel, full brew, pumpkin spice, and a soy.
oh man, okay. We need to.
This one's really good.
I think cold is probably the best.
There you go. Your only application is you have to take a quick photo.
Okay.
Ms. Harris.
Okay.
Please, and a high five.
Great.
Yeah.
Oh, high five.
High five.
All right.
Okay.
We do like a 1980s after school stuff,
Okay.
like a 3 straight. 3 straight. Thank you. That's exciting.
You went to start math, right?
For me anyway. Sorry guys.
Some people.
All right.
You come
That's
to
so
school,
fun.
every night. You too could win a free coffee.
You could win a free coffee.
Absolutely. I just think people would. I do.
I hope so.
All
We
right,
need good ones.
No offense, you're not making me sweaty, so we're on to the next one.
Thanks again.
Yay.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
All right. Well, that was fun. So I guess heading back to here. So Jacqueline, you said because of the square, these are going to be complementary. I agree, even though there's no square over here. So who can explain to me why 1 and 2 have to add up to 90? Wait, hang on. I'm still learning names. Evelyn. Yeah, and this one has to also be 90 over here, right? Why is that? If this one's 90, why does that one have to be 90? Madison? Makes a straight line, yeah. And straight lines have how many degrees? 180, right? So the straight line has 180. 90 is half of that. So the other half also has to be 90. Therefore, those two angles do add up to 90 degrees. And if they add up to 90, they cannot be supplementary because supplementary adds up to 180. And they also cannot be a linear pair because linear pairs also add up to 180. So it's going to be adjacent and complementary. All right, what I want you to do is take 2 minutes. So at 8:15, we're gonna come back and we're gonna check 3, 4, 5, and 6. I want you to try to work through the rest of those 4 that are on this page. And then we will move on from there and start working on some actual calculations and things like that. So work on 3, 4, 5, and 6. We will check off those boxes in a couple minutes. And while you're at it, if you do not have a calculator yet, go ahead and get one because you will need a calculator today. This let's go ahead and have a look here. So maybe I'll start calling on people, or hopefully we got some volunteers here. Somebody tell me, are these adjacent for number 3? What do you think? 1 and 2. Are they next to each other? Yep. All right, so adjacent, which means they're not vertical. Adjacent and vertical cannot happen at the same time. Do those two add up to 90 degrees? No. Do those two add up to 180 degrees? Yeah, they do. Even though there's no numbers listed, they have to add up to 180 because, are they a linear pair? Do these two angles form a straight line? Angle 1 and angle 2? Yeah, they do. So here's angle 1 right here. Angle 2 is right here next to it. And if you just keep going from here to here, that's a straight line. Therefore, they are a linear pair, which means they have to be supplementary. So we got 3 boxes checked on that one. All right, let's keep going. Number 4, adjacent. Yep, they are next to each other, which means not vertical. This next one might be a little bit tricky. Are these complementary? Why not, Rob? It doesn't have the square. Even though this angle looks like maybe it's 90 or close to 90, we don't know because there's nothing to prove that it is. The only way we could say something is 90 degrees is if you have numbers that add up to 90, or it says 90, or there's a square. But there's nothing here to indicate angle measurements of any kind, so we can't say complementary. They're definitely not supplementary because they don't form a straight line, so they're not a linear pair. So number 4 is just adjacent. All right. Number 5. Ooh, this one's kind of fun. What do these markings mean? They're a little bit different than how we showed them yesterday, but they mean the same thing. So who can tell me what those markings mean on those angles? They're the same, yeah. This angle here, angle 1 and the angle next to it are congruent. So questions about angle 1 and angle 2 though. Are the angles 1 and 2 right next to each other? Are they adjacent? No, I see people going no. Good. Are they vertical? Yeah, they are right across from each other. So these 2 lines, this line here intersects with that line and the angles are right across from each other. Therefore, they are vertical. Now, what did we learn yesterday about vertical angles? I wrote it in red with a star next to it in our dictionary. It also says it on the diagram from the back part of the first page. They're congruent, yeah. So right here, I'm going to say that that is also congruent to angle 1, which is congruent to this other angle over here as well. Now this is where we're gonna have a little bit of a train of logic where we're gonna be able to like, I don't know, have a little pathway to work on this next box. Okay, so I think we can say pretty confidently that these are not a linear pair because they're not next to each other. They have to be adjacent to be a linear pair. Those are also not gonna add up to 180. But are they complementary? Do they add up to 90? Can we like confidently say that yes, those angles add up to 90? I see people nodding and I agree with you on that. This one has a little bit of logic to it. Has anybody done any like programming or basic programming on computers before? Like it's all based on logic, right? If this, then that. Okay, conditional statements or sometimes biconditional statements, if you know what I mean by that. I don't know how to program, by the way, but logic is part of what happens in math. So I'm familiar with the concept of how logic works. And how do we know? So Mabel, I saw you nodding your head. Yes, those are going to be complementary. Why do we know that? Why do we know that angle 1 and angle 2 add up to equal 90 degrees? What's that? They are the same. But why do we know that those two same angles would add up to 90? What we're basically saying is that angle 1 is 45 degrees and angle 2 is 45 degrees, right? Because if they're the same and they add up to 90, they each have to be 45. Why would we know that? And it is true, by the way. Madison? The square? Where at? This one here? How does that help us know that those two add to 90? Okay, you're right. But why do we know that? Can anybody explain that? All right, let's trace our path to figure out why. If this angle is 90 here, and we have a straight line here, then we could say that that one is 90, right? Everybody okay with that? If you have a straight line, it's 180 degrees. So if that part of it down here is 90, the part up top has to be 90 as well. Everybody cool with that? All right. And because those two angles are equal to each other, that means that these two angles are each half of 90 degrees, making them how many? 45. So this is 45 and that's 45. And if this one is 45, this one also has to be 45 because it's vertical and vertical angles are congruent. 45, 45, 90. We have no numbers here, but we're able to kind of figure out by going from one to the other to figure out that, yeah, those are complementary, not just because it looks like they are, but because they factually are. We can prove that they are. That is a big part of geometry, is being able to prove something based on a diagram. If you don't have a path to prove something, then you can't actually make the statement, but we can prove that. All right, number 6. Are those adjacent? Now, are they vertical? Yeah, definitely vertical. Do they add up to 90? Are they each 90 or do they add together to be 90? They're each 90. Okay, so they wouldn't be complementary because they'd have to add up to equal 90 if they were complementary. What about supplementary though? Do they add up to equal 180? Yeah, and that's because of the fact that if we got a square here and there's only 2 lines being intersected, then every single angle around the outside or in the middle of that, those are all 90-degree angles. So they're vertical, which means they're equal to each other. If they're each 90, that means 90 plus 90 adds up to equal 180. Last one there. Are they a linear pair? They do add up to 180, but does that mean they're a linear pair? I see some people saying no. Why not? What do you have to have for 2 angles to be a linear pair? What's that? Say it one more time, sorry. Yeah. Yeah, they need to be next to each other and make a straight line. These angles are not next to each other. If it was like 1, if 2 is here, then yes. But because it's across from it, they don't form a straight line because they're not adjacent. They're not next to each other, but they still add up to 180, so they are supplementary. All right, those are some of the types of things that you're gonna have to be mindful of as we work through some of the stuff that we're working on in this unit. So flip the page over. And now we're going to start in on some actual math. So this is where having a calculator might be a good idea. And your assignment, if you looked at your assignment at all yesterday, you probably saw a lot of questions similar to these. So we'll be able to work through this, figure out some angle measurements. We'll be doing a little bit of algebra as we work through this as well. And then whatever time we have left over at the end of class, you will have to work on that assignment. So here we go. Problem number 1. In terms of the math, number 1 should be kind of the easiest one. How many degrees is angle X on problem number 1? What's that? Just this angle here. 112. Why is it 112? It's the same because those angles are vertical angles. Yes. So the 112 degree angle and angle X are congruent because they're vertical. They're right across from each other on intersecting lines. So that means X equals 112. All right. How about number 2? 22. Yeah, why is it 22? Yeah, these two angles are complementary. They add up to 90. If one of them is 68, what's left over to add up to 90? 22. So this would be, the math being done here would be 90 minus 68 is 22. Therefore, X equals 22. We have vertical, congruent, complementary, they add up to 90. What about number 3? How many degrees is angle X, Mabel? $56, yeah, 56 degrees. Why is that? Yeah, 180 minus 124 because those two are supplementary because they're a linear pair. They add up to make a straight line. Straight lines have 180 degrees. So 180 minus 124 equals 56. So X is equal to 56. Any questions about that? Feeling okay so far? So far it's just been either the same or a little bit of subtraction. So this is the kind of stuff that you're going to be doing a lot of in this class, by the way, using diagrams, figuring out what's going on in a different part of the diagram versus where you're looking at. All right, here, number 4. You could figure out any one of these 3 angles at any given time. So it doesn't really matter what order you figure out X, Y, and Z in. We could start by figuring out X, or we could start by figuring out Y, or we could start by figuring out Z. It doesn't matter which. What I'm going to do though is I'm just going to make some markings on here because anytime you see things that could be congruent, that's a good thing to put on there. So for example, the 43 degree angle has to be congruent to angle Y because those are vertical angles. Likewise, X and Z will also be congruent to one another because they're vertical angles as well. So whatever X is, Z is. So basically, once you get X, you have Z. That's nice. And by the way, we already have angle Y in terms of degrees, don't we? What is it? 43, yeah. So we'd say Y equals 43. And then what about X and Z? What are those each? What's that? So they are 180 adding up to, they add up to 180 with the 43 degree angle, but they're not necessarily 180 by themselves. Captain? 137, yeah. Because 180 minus 43, that's what's left over up here. So those two make a straight line, so 137, good. So we'd say, we can actually write them all at the same time too. You can say X is equal to Z is equal to 137. That way you don't need to write X equals 137 and Z equals 137. If multiple things equal the same number, you can just write them in a line like that. Questions about that one? All right. Let's keep going. The next one, number 5. Kind of like number 4, we can figure out any of these right away. We don't have to figure out one before we figure out another one. There's a way that we can just go, figure out right away what each angle is. The one that stands out to me though, right away would be angle Y, because it's vertical with the 72 degree angle, therefore Y equals 72. Now we've got X and Z. Does anybody have an answer for X or Z? Either one. Ralph, which one? Z. So what is Z? Why is it 18? Yeah, and so 18 and 72 equal 90. The 72 and the z have to be complementary because we've got our box here, which means the straight line would be another box over here. So those two angles add up to 90, so that means they are complementary. So z, 80 minus 72 is 18. Nice. Okay, anybody have x? Angle x? Rock, you got it? What'd you get? 108, yeah. Why is that? Yeah, y, x and y, or the 72 and the x, either way, they make a straight line. So these two angles would be a linear pair, so they have to add up to 180. 180 minus 72 is 108, so x equals 108. All right, any questions so far? Hopefully it's making a little bit of sense. All right, let's keep going then. Number 6, angle D and angle E are vertical angles. If the measure of angle E is 105 degrees, find the measure of angle D. Hopefully this one is pretty straightforward. Vertical angles are what? They're the same, they're congruent. So what's their answer for number 6? 105, good. So remember, in terms of writing an angle measurement based on the name of an angle, we're gonna go lowercase m, measure of, and then angle D equals 105 degrees. Because we're not solving for a variable, we need to write it out like the measure of an angle. When you're solving for a variable, you can do like what we did on 1 through 5, where it's just x equals or y equals or z equals. But when it asks you, gives you the actual name of an angle, like angle D, you got to write measure of angle D equals 105 degrees. Include all of that information. All right, number 7, angle A and angle B are complementary angles. If the measure of angle A is 42 degrees, find the measure of angle B. Complementary means what? They add up to 90. Okay, so if A is 42, what's B? 48. Good. The measure of angle B equals 48 degrees. Because 90 minus 42 is 48. Next one, angle P and angle Q are supplementary angles. If the measure of angle Q is 64 degrees, find the measure of angle P. Supplementary means what? $180. Yep. Supplementary means they add up to 180. Complementary would be 90. Supplementary is 180. So 180 minus 64. What does that equal? 116. Good. Measure of angle P equals 116 degrees. All right. Next one, number 9. Angle J and angle K form a linear pair. If the measure of angle J is 113 degrees, find the measure of angle K. Linear pairs add up to what? 180, because linear pairs are supplementary. So this is the same math problem as number 8. It's just using a different word, linear pair, instead of the word supplementary. So what do we get? 67. Good. Measure of angle K equals 67 degrees. 180 minus 113 is 67. All right, you will see questions like that on your assignment. You will also see questions like the ones that are coming up. So these next ones are going to require a little bit of algebra, kind of like those segment ones we had a few days ago. You had a couple questions like that on your quiz as well. So here we go, number 10. Before we move on, sorry, does anybody need more time on 1 through 9? Or does anybody have any questions on 1 through 9? All right, let's keep going then. So, number 10. If the measure of angle PQT equals 3x plus 47, and the measure of angle SQR equals 6x minus 25, find the measure of angle SQR. All right, so in this diagram, we have 4 angles. We've got the one on the left, we have one on the top, one over on the right, one on the bottom. Which one of those 4 angles is PQT? Is it left, top, right, or bottom? PQT, top, good. PQT is the top angle because Q is always the vertex, which every angle here has the same vertex, it's Q. But if you start at P go to Q, and then over to T, it's talking about this angle right here, this open space in between those 2 points. So PQT is this one. So I'm just going to write 3x plus 47 in that space, the space in between P and T, which talks about that angle. We're not talking about a side length or segment length or anything like that. We're talking about how wide open that angle is. SQR, left, right, or bottom? Bottom. All right. So that would be 6x minus 25. How do those angles relate to each other? They are vertical angles, meaning they're congruent. Yeah. So these 2 angles are congruent, which means they're equal to one another. So our equation then, we got to solve for x. And then once we have x, we're going to plug it back into this angle here, SQR, to figure out the degrees. So the equation we're going to write is setting 3x plus 47 equal to 6x minus 25. So 3x plus 47 equals 6x minus 25. Because angle PQT is the same measure as angle SQR. So there's a few things that need to happen before you can actually write your equation. You got to figure out, all right, where are these angles at? What is the relationship between the angles? And then use that relationship to write your equation. Now we're going to go ahead and solve. And I'm just going to keep things on the left. If you want to subtract 3x to move the 3x to the right, that's fine. I'm going to subtract 6x though, and I'm going to just realizing I have to write quite a bit smaller now. All right. So 3 minus 6 would be negative 3. So that's negative 3x plus 47 equals negative 25. Because there's a minus 25, so that would be a negative 25. And then our next step, what do we do next to solve here? Yeah, subtract 47 minus 47. All right. Which is what? It would be even more negative, right? Negative 72. Good. So negative 3x equals negative 72. And I think I heard the answer for x already. 24, yeah. If you divide both of these by negative 3 to get x by itself, negative 72 divided by negative 3 is positive 24. So x is equal to 24. That is not the answer to the question, though. Even though it is the value of x. By the way, I saw this happen on the quiz a few days ago, where people solved for x on the very last question, and then they just stopped. If you did that, I think I gave you like 1.5 out of 2 points because you did pretty much all of the work. You just didn't do the very last little bit, which is to take the value of x and then put it into the expression that you need to use in order to figure out the angle that you're going for here. So this will be 6 times 24 minus 25. That's the math that has to be done. What is it? 119. Good. So this equals 119. So the answer, the way we need to write this is it's asking for the measure of angle SQR. So we need to write lowercase m, measure of angle SQR equals 119 degrees. That is how we deal with that. All right. So the next thing we're going to look at, any questions on 10 before we look at 11? For 11, we are given information about this diagram that is not yet marked on the diagram. That will be a very common occurrence when you're reading a lot of these problems. So what does this say right? You can tell me what this says right here. If what? What does that say? Line AB, okay, is what? What does that word mean? Or that symbol? Congruence to the equals with the squiggly above it. Perpendicular, yeah. So the upside down capital T means perpendicular. So that means that line AB, this one here, is perpendicular to ray CD. And it's ray because there's only one arrow. So here's ray CD, and it's perpendicular to line AB. What does perpendicular mean? What kind of an angle does it create? A 90-degree angle, yeah. So that means this is 90, and that's 90. We're allowed to do that because it tells us right here that those two are perpendicular to one another, meaning We got a 90-degree angle with each of those angles. All right, now we got a little bit more information. It says the measure of angle DCE is 7x plus 2, and the measure of angle ECB is x plus 8. Where is angle DCE? Is it on the left or the right? It's where? On the right? Okay, and is it the top or the bottom of the right? The top, good. Angle DCE is right here. So in here, I'm going to write 7x plus 2. So we're labeling our diagram. We're putting as much information from what's written on the diagram so you can visually see what's going on. And then measure of angle ECB. Is that one on the left or the right? The right, top or bottom? Bottom. So the bottom angle on the right, that would be this one here. I'm going to put a little arrow because I don't think I'll be able to write small enough to get that in there. X plus 8. All right. And we have to figure out the measure of angle DCE. So we have to figure out the measure of the top angle here, of those two. Now, are those two angles equal to each other? Do you have the same measure? No. So we can't write what we wrote for number 10. Number 10, we wrote equal to each other, but that's because they were vertical, and vertical angles have to be equal to one another. So we can't say that those two are equal to each other. What can we say though, Rob? They equal 90. So what equation could we write to say that? 8x plus 10 equals 90? Yeah. And I'm actually going to write the step before that, before we combine like terms. If you start with that, that's totally fine now. If we take this angle here and we add that angle there, those should add up to equal 90 because they create a right angle. So DCE and ECB are complementary. Everybody okay with that? Like these two angles have to add up to equal 90, so they're complementary. So if we add them together, that would be 7x plus 2 plus x plus 8 equals 90. That angle there plus that angle there add up to equal 90 degrees. So every single problem might be a little bit different in terms of how you set up the problem. Sometimes they'll be equal, sometimes they'll add up to 90, sometimes they'll add up to 180. And then Rob, you said 8x plus 10, right? Yeah, because 7x plus x, that would be 7 plus 1, which is 8, so that's 8x. And then 2 plus 8 is 10. So we combine our like terms, and we get 8x plus 10 equals 90. And if you know that, you can just start by writing 8x plus 10 equals 90. You do not have to start up top here. I just wanted to show you what it looked like before adding them together. But if you do your like terms, combine them here, and then just write your equation there, that's fine. Next, what do we do? Subtract 10, all right. Which would be 80. So 8x equals 80. And then what? Divide by 8. So what does x equal? 10, all right. Is that the answer? No. What is the answer? It's not 10. We're going to use the 10 though. 72, yeah. Yep. Measure of angle DCE equals 72 because we want this angle here. We want the top angle on the right. So if we take 10, plug it in for x, 7 times 10 is 70, plus 2 more is 72. So the measure of angle DCE equals 72 degrees. All right. Any questions on that one? By the way, this is what I really enjoy about geometry. I actually really like this kind of stuff because it's like a puzzle for me, you know? I don't know if it feels that way for you. It definitely feels that way for me. I like math though. So if you don't feel that way, I get it. Not many people are like enthused about math, but like giving some information and like piecing it together, it's almost like Legos, where you got this like little bit of instruction, and then you kind of have to figure out the rest of it. So I'm a fan. All right. Last one on this page, then we got a few more questions on our third page because we have 3 pages. So let's see. If the measure of angle KNM is equal to 8x minus 5, and the measure of angle MNJ is equal to 4x minus 19, find the measure of angle KNM. So left, top, right, or bottom, which one is KNM? The left one, the top one, the right one, and the bottom one. I think I heard it. What was it? The one on the right, yeah. So KNM is this one right here in this space. So that's 8x minus 5. By the way, we've seen congruent with number 10. We've seen complementary with number 11. What do we think 12 is going to be? What's the other angle relationship that we have that we haven't used yet with these? We'll find out. MNJ. Left, top, or bottom? Yeah, I think the left one is LNJ. So MNJ would be the one on the bottom. All right. So I'm just going to go ahead and draw an arrow to that one because I don't think I have room in there to write 4x minus 19. So I'll just write 4x minus 19 right here with an arrow to it. All right. Now, mathematically, how do those two angles relate? They add up to 180. Yeah, they are next to each other and they form a straight line right there. Those two angles next to one another. That means they're a linear pair, and linear pairs are supplementary. So that's the one thing we haven't used yet. We've done equal with congruent with number 10. We've got complementary with number 11, and now number 12, we have supplementary. So this one will set up almost the same as number 11, except they won't add up to 90. They'll add up to what? 180. All right, so let's write that equation. And again, if you just want to combine your like terms here and then start by having the combined like terms as your equation, that's fine. I'm going to do the same thing I did on number 11 though. So we'll go with 8x minus 5 plus 4x minus 19 is equal to 180. So we add the two angles together, this one plus this one, and they add up to equal 180. And then we'll combine our like terms. Let's see, 8 plus 4 is 12, so that'll be 12x. And if you have a -5 and a -19, what does that add up to? -24. All right, so minus 24 equals 180. And now it's a two-step equation. We'll go ahead and add 24 to both sides. So plus 24, which equals 204, right? Okay, so 12x equals 204. So what does x equal? What is it? 17? All right, so x equals 17. All right, now we have to find the measure of KNM. Find the measure of angle KNM. That's the 8x minus 5 one. So I'm just going to write 8 times 17 minus 5. Was it? 131? Okay. Yeah, 8 times 17 would be 136. 136 minus 5 is 131. Good. So 131. So the answer, measure of angle KNM equals 131 degrees. There we go. All right, we have one more page to look at. Now, I'm not going to go over every single problem from this next page because I want to make sure you have some time to work today. So let's go ahead and look at, I'll just give you a select few. All right, 13. We'll take a look at 13. There's a little bit more difference in terms of how these ones set up. There's a big difference between 13 and the 3 that we just looked at. What is that big difference? What's the major difference between 13 and the other ones we've seen so far? Ralph? What's that? There's no numbers. What else? Like in terms of the equation ones we just looked at, 10, 11, and 12. Find the value of x and y. Yeah, we have 2 variables here. So 10, 11, and 12 had only 1 variable in each of those problems. Now we have 2 variables. It doesn't really increase the difficulty that much, but it does kind of make sure that you need to do one thing before the other. So in order to actually solve this, you have to figure out x first, because that's the variable that shows up twice. The only way to solve for a variable is to be able to write an equation with it. And if we write an equation with y first, it would also include x. And you can't get just a number by itself if you have 2 variables in one equation. It doesn't work. So we have to start by using angle DEG and angle GEF first. And once we do that, we can figure out X, figure out an angle measurement for one of those two. Then we can write our second equation to solve for Y. So let's go ahead and work through this. So it says DEG, which would be the angle on the left here. That's this one here. The measure of angle DEG is 5x minus 4. So I'm just going to write 5x minus 4. That's the angle inside that. GEF is the one up top. That would be 7x minus 8. I'm also going to label angle DEH. That is 9y minus 5. That's the one on the bottom. So we got everything labeled there. We have to start off by figuring out X. So the two angles that have X, what's the relationship between those two? They equal 180, yeah. They're next to each other. They create a straight line. Therefore, those two have to add up to equal 180. Yeah, Madison? It says 9y plus 5. Thank you. All right. That'll be important for later because otherwise that wouldn't have worked. Thanks, Madison. All right. So these two angles here, DEG and GEF, they are next to each other and they create a straight line. Therefore, they add up to 180. So I'm just going to go ahead and combine like terms before I write the equation this time. So 5x plus 7x is 12x. And then -8 and -4 equal -12. So 12x minus 12 equals 180. So I just combined those two angles together. They add up to equal 180. And then adding 12 to both sides means that we're going to get 12x equals 192. By the way, at this point, if you are comfortable enough with the process of the algebra equation solving, you don't need to write in like plus 12 on both sides if you don't want to. If it still helps to do that, definitely do that. But if you just want to go straight from here to here, that's fine. I will know what you did. I'll know that you added 12 to get from here to here. And then we're going to divide by 12. What's 192 divided by 12? 16. All right. So x equals 16. And before we move on to figuring out what DEH is, I'm going to put some symbols on my diagram here because the easiest relationship between the angle with Y and any of the other angles that I see in terms of how I would do this, yes, it does add up to 180 with the one next to it here. But if things can be equal to one another, I find that to be a little bit simpler. So instead of using the supplementary relationship with DEH, I'm going to use the vertical angle relationship with the one across from it. Because I would find that a little bit easier in terms of solving for Y once we get to that point. But before we can solve for Y, we need to plug X in to 7x minus 8 to figure out how many degrees this angle is actually equal to. So 7 times 16 minus 8. What is it? 124? 104, yeah. Okay. So 104 degrees. I'm just going to put that right above it, which means that 9y minus 5 is also equal to 104 degrees. So our other equation is just going to say 9y plus 5, not minus 5. 9y plus 5 equals 104. The 104, we took our value of x and we plug it in for x here. So 7 times 16 minus 8. We need to know how many degrees that is before we can set it equal to that. So once we plug that in, multiply, subtract, we get 104, and then we can know that 9y plus 5 is equal to that. Yeah. Then we're going to subtract 5 from both sides. So 9y equals 99. And divide by 9, what does y equal? 11. Yeah, so y equals 11. So x equals 16, y equals 11. Cool. Anytime you have an equation, or not an equation, but you have a problem where you've got like 3 different expressions, that would be 5x minus 4, 7x minus 8, and 9y plus 5. Those 3 expressions there. In terms of knowing which variable to solve for first, it's the variable that shows up twice. Whichever one shows up twice is the one that you need to solve for first. And then once you have that, you're going to plug in, figure out the actual angle measurement, then you can solve for the other variable. We are going to skip 14. And we're also going to skip 15. We've already done problems like that. Since R and S are complementary, all you'd have to do is add those two together and set them equal to 90 and solve for X. and then plug in for R. We've already done stuff like that. Same with supplementary. You'd add them together, set them equal to 180, solve for X, and then plug in for Q. We've already done that, so we don't need to worry about that. 16 and 17, however, these ones become a little bit more challenging because these ones are more like classic word problems from Algebra 1, which I know everybody just loves. So angle C and angle D form a linear pair. So they add up to 180, we know that. The measure of angle D, this is where it gets a little trickier. The measure of angle D is 6 more than twice the measure of angle C. Find the measure of angle D. All right, how many angles are we dealing with? 2, right? Okay. So what I'm going to say is, I'm going to say angle C, dot, dot. I'm going to say angle D, dot, dot. Because what we want to do here, we've got 2 different angles, but we only want to use one variable in order to solve for both of them. Because if we use 2 variables, we can't actually figure out a number. So we got to use the same variable to describe both of these angles. Anytime, and this is something that I try to have everybody remember, anytime that 2 things are being described, the one that has more words with it is going to be the one that has like numbers along with X. The one that is mentioned less is the one that is X. So for example here, the measure of angle D is 6 more than twice the measure of angle C. Angle D has a lot more description with it. Because D, it's saying it's multiplied or it's added on 2 by 6 and it's doubled as well. In comparison with angle C, there's not much mentioned here about angle C. Everything is, all the words and things are with angle D. So C, because it has fewer words, is going to be the simpler of the 2, and we're just going to call this X. So angle C is X, because there's less words with it in the problem. Angle D is going to be built around X. So angle D is 6 more than X, only after, though, it's been multiplied by 2. It's 6 more than twice the value of X. So whenever you think of like 6 more than or less than, that's going to happen after the words that come next. So I'm going to write plus 6 over here, leave a gap. And then to the left of the plus 6, it would be twice the value of C. And since we said that C is X, it would be 2 times that, meaning 2X. These types of problems can be tricky. If you see more than, if you see less than, that number will happen after, even though it's written first, 6 more than, it's written first, but it will happen second because the way that the words are written imply the order is going to happen after the thing that is written next. I hope that makes sense. All right, and it's equal to 6 more than twice, 2 times the measure of angle C. So those are the 2 angles we have. And they're complementary. Now that they're not complementary, they're supplementary because they're a linear pair. Now that we've got that figured out, we can just add these together and set them equal to 180. So X and 2X would be 3X plus 6 equals 180. And we can just go through and solve. So we'll subtract 6 from both sides. So that would be 3X equals 174. We'll make this pretty quick. What's 174 divided by 3? 3X, because if we add these together, yeah. So we're totaling them up. So linear pair means they add up. So 1X, 2X, 3X. What's 174 divided by 3? What is it? 58? Okay. So X is 58. Does it want us to figure out the measure of angle C or D? D. Okay. So plug in 58 here. So 58 times 2 plus 6. $122. So measure of angle D, 122 degrees. And by the way, if you add that with the measure of angle C, which is 58, those 2 should add up to equal 180 because they're a linear pair, and they do. All right. Take a look at 17 real quick. Very similar to number 16. So we're going to say, all right, we got 2 angles. We got angle J. We got angle K. They are complementary. They add up to 90. The measure of angle J is 18 less than the measure of angle K. Find the measures of both angles. Which one has less written about it in that second sentence, J or K? K has less written about it, so K is X. What do we know about J in relation to X? 18 less than that one, which doesn't mean 18 minus x, it means x minus 18. That is important. X minus 18. If it's 18 minus x, you're not going to get the right answer. The order of subtraction matters a lot. So we're saying whatever k is, j is 18 less than that. So it's the measure of angle k, which is x minus 18. All right, then we're going to add those two together, and we're going to set them equal to 90 because they're complementary. So there's two x's here, so that'd be 2x minus 18 equals 90. And if we add 18, that would be 2x equals 108. And if we divide by 2, that means that x should be equal to 54. Take away 18 from 54, what do you get? What's that? The 2 here? Yeah, because if you add this one with that one, here's one x, here's another x. So there's two x's. Because you have to add them together. Yeah. So the measure of angle K equals 54 degrees. What's the measure of angle J? 36. 54 minus 18 is 36. And 54 plus 36 is 90 because they have to add up to equal 90 degrees as well. Okay, we'll take a look at one more and then I'll give you the remaining time to get started. There's not going to be a ton of time. Hopefully maybe start a little bit yesterday. I know we're kind of going a little bit slowly through these, but it's important to really know how to work these out. Real quick, we're not actually going to do 18, but I will talk about it real quick. So it says ray UW bisects angle TUV. So TUV is the big angle here, okay? And this ray right here, UW, bisects this big angle. What does bisect mean? Cut in half, yeah. So bisect means cut in half, which means that this angle would be equal to that one there. So if something gets cut in half, it's cut into two equal parts. It says that angle TUW, the one on the left, is 13x minus 5, and angle WUV, the one on the right, is 7x plus 31. So if we were to solve this one, which we're not going to, we would just set those two things equal to each other because they're each half of the larger angle, because they've been bisected. So that's how we deal with that. The next one says that ray MO, this one right here, bisects angle PMN. That would be this angle here. So that means that this top part of the angle and the bottom part are equal to each other because the larger angle is being bisected. This one's a little bit different because it says that angle PMN is 74 degrees. PMN is this whole thing, right? It's from here to here to here. So that means that the two of those together equals 74. So what I'm going to do with this one is I'm going to do a little dash up here and a little dash over here, like that. And then I'm going to draw a little bit of an arc there. And in between, I'm going to say 74 and do that. So this is just a way of showing that the degrees between both of those angles that are equal to one another is 74. PMN is 74 degrees. Visually, does that make sense? Does that look okay to folks? Like this angle here, this larger angle here that's made up of both of these smaller ones is 74 degrees. So the one that's being cut in half, so there's the one that's being cut in half there, the whole thing is 74. So PMN is PMN. All right. So if the whole thing here is 74 and those two are equal to each other, that means it's being cut in half. What's half of 74? What is it, 37? Okay. So OMN is the bottom half, which would be equal to half of 74, which would be equal to 37 degrees. So the equation that we would write for this one is 2x plus 7 equals 37. Because the bottom half is equal to half of 74. Half of 74 is 37. And then you would go through and solve for x on that one. We're not going to finish that one either. I'm just kind of showing you how to set these up. All right, then the last one, number 20, says that EF, if EF, ray EF is here, if it bisects angle CEB, so that's that obtuse angle, meaning that this angle here would be congruent to this one here. It also says that angle CEF is 7x plus 21. So I'm going to put 7x plus 21 inside of CEF. And it says that angle FEB is 10x minus 3. Find the measure of angle, here's a weird one, DEB. Angle DEB in this diagram is actually this angle right there that I've highlighted in blue, and it doesn't really look blue up there, but it's blue. So we're trying to figure out that angle. First of all, we know these two are equal, right? Because they're halves of one angle that's being cut in half. So we would set those equal to each other, solve for x. Everybody okay with that so far? Set them equal, solve for x. Once you have x, I'm just going to explain this. We're not going to do it. Once you have x, you would plug the x back in here and here to figure out the angle measurements. All right. And then can everybody agree that?
Your attention, please, we're looking for someone to cover a class 5th period. If you're available, please call the office. Coverage for a class 5th period, please.
Would everybody agree that this is a straight line? Everybody okay with that? Okay. Those two angles and the angle down here, those three angles together would have to add up to 180 then. So once you have x, plug it in here and here, add those two together, and then take that away from 180 to get DEB. That's what would happen for that. All right. You all have the assignment from yesterday. Go ahead and get started on that. I know we don't have a whole lot of time left. Thank you for being patient with that. Once again, I will be gone on Monday. So I will just have this assignment due on Tuesday. Okay, we can check the answers for this on Tuesday. So you've got the weekend plus a day.